one of the benefits, I think, of a platform like this is that if you are busy clinically, or if you can't watch or listen or engage real time, you can do this at other times. So that is fabulous for such a time as this. So delighted to be with you all, albeit virtually on the screen. My name is Jacqueline Dunkley-Bent. I'm the Chief Midwifery Officer for the NHS in England.
So this is what's called a hybrid event. There are people in the room, there are people watching in groups around the country, and there are people still watching in their pajamas at home. Good morning, Sue, how are you?
Good morning, I'm fine, Neil, thank you very much. It's fantastic to be here.
My argument is that the solution is health optimization. Prevention is far better than cure.
And I think there is a real risk that services that are lost or reduced during the time of COVID are not restored.
And I hope that you can take valuable insights from today. And if you're listening tonight, or if you're listening next week or next month, take valuable insights from the speakers from today and share the word, share the positive messages with your colleagues, because in these dark times, in these challenging times, everybody needs a green shoot and a pearl of wisdom. Thank you very much, and we are in this together. We stand united together.
Hello everybody, lovely to welcome you all to the Midwifery and Maternity Hour for this week. I hope everybody's comfortable and has a chance to have something to drink, and for anybody joining in groups or collaboratively, welcome, and those joining online, hello. A really warm welcome to this sort of blustery October evening. I'd just really like to say a huge thank you to everybody at the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. Thanks so much for giving this opportunity for us to host this Maternity Hour. I've got really excited to welcome two special guests this evening. I've got Professor Jenny Gamble from the University of Coventry with us tonight. Hi Jenny, it's lovely to have you here. And we've got Caitlin Wilson over from the University of Worcester, and also working across the University of Worcester and Worcester Acute Trust. So thank you for both being with us this evening. It's lovely to have you here. We're going to be sharing with you tonight insights into relational connected learning experiences for student midwives. So the focus of this Maternity Midwifery Hour focusing on we know that everybody's really hard in current climates, pressured climates, to support women, birthing people and families. And we're here tonight to really focus in on our future midwives. It's really important that we offer support, encouragement and nourishment to future midwives so that they can optimise learning experiences and go out into their practice as qualified midwives, confident, supported and connected. So I'm going to start the evening with sharing some insights and sharing some moments, things that are impacting on us at the moment working out in maternity services. So I'd just like to share my screen so that I can talk you through some things that I think really frame the hour that we're going to spend together tonight. So I'd just like to share with you some insights about caring connections. And these are some slides that I put together with my mum, Sheena Byram, and together in our work with All for Maternity. So it's really important through these busy times that we work and continue to support birthing women, people and families. But in order for us to do that, it's really important that we care for each other and care for ourselves. And tonight we really want to reach out and care for you, to be with you. Those of you that are listening, we want you to feel heard, seen and recognised for the valuable work that you do every day to support birthing women, people and families. We know that everybody's working in really increasingly pressured contexts, you know, confounded by the pandemic and all of the wider pressures, the inequities, the structural challenges that we're facing to deliver equitable care that's safe. And we know that there are ongoing important requirements for us to transform our services. And collectively, this has created a cycle of pressure and lots to achieve and reach out towards, but equally challenging moments for us to face together. And we know that these challenges have an impact on the way that we attend work, the way that we feel, the cultures of our practice, and can have a really big, significant impact on us. We know that equally some of these pressures can have an impact on the families that we're caring for. And we know that evidence is showing that many women can experience challenges and trauma as a response to their experiences. But at the same time, we can experience vicarious trauma as midwives, students working in really challenging contexts. So we know that the pandemic has increased the pressures and some of the challenges that we can experience, and the reports that are being fed through are reflecting this across our country and actually probably globally because of the pressures on our health systems from the pandemic. But when you've already got a strained and challenged resources, where we've faced lots of austerity that's had an impact on our resources, both staff resources and wider resources across the NHS, we know that it's created an extra burden and challenges. When we look at the Royal College of Midwives' recent survey results, some key themes that have come out from that was published just this month. Midwives that are considering leaving, there's over half of the midwives that completed the survey from the RCM membership of considering leaving, and staffing levels and concerns about delivering safe care. Just over 80% of the respondents are really concerned about those issues, and many of the respondents are not feeling valued in their work, with recently qualified staff, midwives, being the most dissatisfied. And that's a deep concern to us, and obviously we need to consider these issues really carefully together. There's lots to celebrate, and it's been the RCM Awards today, and I hope those that were successful in being nominated and awarded feel really proud of the work that they're doing to, drive forward effective care for families and for each other, and transform services, especially during this current climate. But we know that it's important to acknowledge that workforce burnout has been described as being the highest in the history of the NHS and care systems, and that's across all of our NHS staff. But obviously we're concerned for midwives and future midwives. We know that burnout is experienced as emotional exhaustion, depersonalisation, cynicism and lack of personal achievement. And we also know that when we experience burnout, it can really impact on our physical health. So it's really important that collectively we do attend to some of these challenges and listen to the voices of colleagues and midwives and future midwives working clinically in education, in academia, and obviously in leadership positions and policy, because collectively this is something that's impacting everybody. We know that these challenges have an impact not just on us as staff, but also on the families that we care for. And actually we share, both the families that we care for and the staff share the need for choice, control and continuity in our work. And so these principles underpin what we want to share and discuss tonight, with a special focus on our future midwives and the importance that future midwives are offered choice, control and continuity in their learning journeys. We know that midwives transform outcomes. It's really important to remember the value that we hold in our work, but we have to also acknowledge that we need to feel safe in our work, because safety for us enables safety for all. It's in time for us all to come together to take action. We know that stress actually on its own isn't bad for you, but being stuck in stress is what can cause the difficulty for your physical well-being, your psychosocial and emotional well-being. Well, actually, when we look at burnout and some of the solutions, we want to think about, well, what are some of the solutions? And what we know from looking at burnout and the symptoms of burnout is that actually it's not self-care that will help us to overcome it, but it's about us all caring about each other. And again, that's part of what we want to share and talk about today, how we can care for students and how students can care for each other. These are some little tips for those listening from the brilliant book Burnout, this great book about solving the secret to solving the stress cycle. Gives some really quick, fast-acting stress calmers. And actually the book talks about the importance of actually moving our body to remove the impact of stress and adrenaline and cortisol. But lovely small things like physical affection, creative expression, having a good cry, laughing, deep breathing, are all things that we can do to make a difference. And we know that there's great resources out there of things that you can do moment by moment to help. But more important than those things for long-lasting well-being and burnout reduction is eudonics, and the importance of us actually reconnecting with a sense of purpose and meaning in our work and in our lives. And actually, this is something that we want to centre on tonight, is this reconnection to our purpose. And I just wanted to play this little film because I think it really helps to bring us into that space about why did we all come into midwifery? Why is midwifery important? Why does it matter? So I'm just going to play this little film for us to think about reconnecting to our purpose as midwives.
you. We love you.
So a real big thank you to all of the people that collaborated with us to create that film. I hope it helps us to remember who we are and why we do the important work that we do together to make a difference to families. And we hope that that helps to feel inspiring, especially to our future midwives who are starting out on their journey towards midwifery. We know that relational connected care has a huge impact, not only for the people that we're providing care to, but also to ourselves. It helps us to release oxytocin and feel a sense of meaning in our life that can help us to feel that sustained sense of well-being. We know that it helps to elicit love, courage, compassion, kindness, and helps us to connect with our vulnerability and supports us in our advocacy and work to deliver person-centred care that's reciprocal. And we get so much from the relationships that from the families that we meet and work with. Just like to put a call out to the fantastic work that's going on at the moment to really make a difference, to listen to voices and to raise issues and the concerns that we're all facing at the moment. We've got the Facebook group that's been set up by an amazing group of grassroots midwives, birth workers, doulas, women, families coming together to march with midwives to raise the issues, and people are welcome to join the group on Facebook if you just search for March with Midwives, and you can also arrange local vigils on the 21st of November at 2 p.m. People are having candlelight vigils just to recognise the work of midwives and to call for change and raise issues. We've also got the incredible Chief Midwife, Jacqueline Dunkley-Bent, and her team that are working really hard to transform perceptions of midwives across NHS England, and the work that they're doing is fantastic to support NHS ambassadors. There's an amazing network of midwifery ambassadors that are working really hard to feed issues that are facing midwives every day up into the regional networks and to the chief midwife team, the regional chief midwives, and there's work being planned to help respond to all of the challenges that we're facing at a national, regional and local level. We've also got the petition that has been circulated by Cheryl Samuels that's really important, and there's, as of today, over 61,000 people that have signed that petition. So please look out for that and sign it if you feel able. We've also got amazing people that are coming together as collectives to elevate issues that are so important as we help to improve and transform maternity care. There's really excellent events that are upcoming. So there's the Through the Dark Lens conference on the 12th and 13th of November. Look out for that and join it. A 2-day conference that's been brought together by Abuela Doulas and the Association of South Asian Midwives. There's also the Community of Cultures that run online open events for Black, Asian and ethnic minority people and families. So please look out for these great opportunities to learn and develop and grow. And also we collaborate with the Maternity and Midwifery Forums, and we've got the student an education event that's happening online on the 10th of November that's led by the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. So look out for that. There's over 700 people already registered to join. And we're really happy to support that at the Practicing Midwife. We've got our own global midwifery conference event that's happening on the 19th and 20th of November. So November's a really busy month to help people come together and connect. And this conference is going to be £20 for midwives or £10 for students. So look out for that one. And there are some concession places as well. It'd be really nice to bring people together from around the world to talk about global midwifery issues. Obviously, we want to send a big shout out to all our fantastic student midwives that help bring you the Student Midwife Journal. And it's just to remind students that please get involved, you know, assignments that you've written and things that you've done, please let us know if you'd like to contribute. You can submit articles through our website, but we're always looking for new contributors. So I just wanted to remind you that that's something that can really make you feel good through your studies, to get involved in the Student Midwife Journal and network. We've also got some special offers on at the moment to offer extra support to staff, because we recognise everybody's working so hard. So look out for our special offers. We've got some for midwives and students, and specifically for students here with our new student starter kit, where you get a wooden pinard and a knitted breast for placement, and a book, Rachel Reed's wonderful Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. You get those free when you join Author Maternity. We've also got, if you particularly like being organised, we've got a great offer with the Happy Student Company, where you can join Author Maternity and get a free midwifery student digital planner, which helps you stay organised. But I just wanted to leave you with this beautiful...
I've looked after a lady in labour who was hard of hearing, and she communicated by lip reading. I had to remember to keep looking up and using my thumbs and saying, yeah, the baby's coming. And like just facial expressions. And when she delivered the baby, I just looked up at her, and she was like crying, and her partner was crying, and then I started crying. It was just lovely. After my son was born, they transferred you to the postnatal ward. Everybody who saw me said, congratulations, well done. And it made me feel like a queen, because it was kind of, I'd done the best thing that my body could do.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that's joining us tonight for all you do to help families feel this good about the care that they receive, and just to keep this in our hearts is what we're aiming to do in our work as midwives. So I just want to say thank you and welcome. And I'd love to invite you to hear from our guests this evening. So we've got two people that have joined us, and we're going to start with Professor Jenny Gamble. And Jenny's a professor of midwifery. She's got a strong background in maternity research, midwifery education, clinical practice, professional leadership and innovation. And we're so delighted that you can be here with us tonight, Jenny. In August 2021, Jenny migrated from Brisbane, Australia, to join Coventry University to establish the Centre for Care Excellence. Previously, she was a professor and head of midwifery at Griffith University, and we're really lucky tonight that Jenny's here to share some of that work that she led at the Griffith University. Her career there includes establishing private midwifery practice in Brisbane, working clinically as a midwife in tertiary services and remote area nursing in northwest Australia. Her research programme is clinically significant, interdisciplinary, and actively engages maternity consumers. She has diverse research interests, including value-based healthcare, models of maternity care, perinatal mental health, workforce wellbeing and education. And she's published over 160 peer-reviewed papers. Wow, it's incredible. In 2019, she led the development of the Transforming Maternity Care Collaborative across Australia, which is a research and consultancy organisation, and the collaborative aims to drive the reform of maternity services to provide universal access to community-based, midwife-led continuity of care that is centred around respecting women's choices. And I was really lucky to meet Jenny in 2018 at a local conference that the Griffith University held, where I learnt all about the amazing midwifery education programme, research and curriculum at Griffith University. And I'm so delighted that you could be here to share some insights into that programme with us this evening, Jenny. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks very much, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right. It's a great pleasure to be here with everybody and to be in the UK. People keep saying, why did you come? I can 100% tell you that the weather has been lovely and mild, but nobody comes to England for the weather. It is my pleasure to share with you the learnings that we've had and the work that we've done in really building up a program of work and embedding that into education practice at Griffith University. So just a little bit of background, we started a Bachelor of Midwifery in 2010, and we always wanted to design it to really embrace all the best principles and practices of contemporary learning and teaching, theory and evidence. And we sort of did that really. So just to move us along a little bit. Okay. All right, that's me. I'm a professor at Coventry University in a joint appointment with University Hospital of Coventry, Warwickshire, and I'm still Professor Emeritus at Griffith University. So I guess I want to talk to you today about learning woman-centered care and evidence-based care. So we're all very familiar with best available evidence about models of care. Women and their babies do better, when they have continuity of care, a known midwife across pregnancy, labour and birth, and postpartum. And we also know that that relationship-based care really gives midwives, student midwives, the very best opportunity to really get a strong sense of woman-centered care. So I'm going to talk to you about sort of 3 big developments out of all of the things we've done that are really focused around the clinical practicum component of the students' education program. And the first one is about curriculum design to foster relationship-based care. The second one is about evaluating clinical practice experience, and we've used and designed a special tool called MidStep, but there's characteristics of that I think are important to the audience tonight. And we've really done a whole body of work, and that's still ongoing, in fact, about the contribution that students make to clinical care and outcomes for women and their babies. Just a little bit about a background about Australia. So I know you've just got your new standards, your new midwifery education standards here in the UK. In Australia for some years now, pioneered really by ACM and a group of midwifery leaders, we introduced the idea that student midwives should provide continuity of midwifery care, continuity of student midwife care to a number of women throughout their education program. So the current regulations say that pre-registration midwifery students are required to engage in a minimum of 10 continuity of care experiences. And in the interest of time tonight, I won't talk about all the requirements in that, but they have to do a certain number of antenatal visits, be there for labour and birth, and be there postnatally for a certain number of visits. So they don't have to do all of the care. And of course, they're under supervision of a registered health professional, just about always a midwife. Although in Australia, especially if the woman's receiving fragmented care, she may receive some of her care from a GP, particularly, for instance, a 6-week postnatal visit. She may receive some of her antenatal visits at a GP as well. And the student midwife can certainly go along to that and be supervised by a GP. But most student midwives don't choose that option. And, the most common one would be that 6-week postnatal GP visit if the woman would have with the student midwife. So that's just the nuts and bolts of it without going into a whole lot of detail, because really I want to talk about the enabling of this through by design. So I think it really starts with thinking about how you're going to design your curriculum. And if you come to grips with quite quickly the beneficial outcomes of continuity of care experience for both students and the women, it's a unbelievably valuable experience for student midwives. So much so that our Nordic colleagues have got me speaking to the Swedish midwives have got me speaking to their colleagues later on this month about continuity of care experiences for student midwives. In part because we've got formal ways that we've assessed this throughout our education-related research, but we also talk to all our students, and you'll say to the students, how's that going for you? And they'll say, it's by far the hardest thing to fit in on top of assignments, shifts, all their other clinical requirements, families, everything, travel. They think it's the hardest thing to do, but they also, by a country mile, think it's the most valuable thing to do, that they really felt they learned how to be a midwife by doing this. The continuity of care experience builds mutual support and nurturing between the woman and the students, and it fosters clinical confidence, resilience, and influences their career goals. This is all work that we've done. I'm only going to talk about some of the papers tonight over the years, but I think that notion of fostering clinical confidence is quite important, because the students will say to us things like, when the woman was in fragmented care, e.g. she's, no continuity, she might have seen a different midwife each time antenatally, or a different health practitioner. Same again for labour and birth, shift-based care, and same again postnatally. The student, especially as they matured as students, by the time they were in third year, they really started to realise that the only continuity that was being provided by them, and that they had special insights and knowledge into the woman's whole journey from the health service point of view, but also, and so importantly, from the woman's point of view. So they would be able to pipe up and say, oh no, she had those tests done last time she was here. You just have to dig around for them. They definitely were done. So she also just knew about the woman's whole journey, not just, I don't mean to belittle that, but not just the woman's perspective of that journey. And that meant she had unique insights to share. So they would, as they were nearing the end of their third year, they felt more and more confident about their clinical skills, about their knowledge of the system, about their knowledge of the woman, but also, and I think this was a massive learning, about the gaps in the system and how women can fall through the gaps. And that different care providers at different visits aren't necessarily building that whole clinical picture of pregnancy, labour and birth, and that postnatal period. For us, it was very important to make sure we had curriculum coherence, both structural and conceptual elements that were focused on continuity of care experiences. So really, we designed the curriculum to enable learnings at all levels around continuity of care. So we wanted attitude development, knowledge, skills, know-how about how this all worked, because that's what we're really preparing these students for, is that ability to both work in continuity care models, but also be part of that picture of driving reform towards universal access to continuity of care for women and their babies. The education standards, so we concluded that the education standards that preference continuity of care experience as the optimal clinical education model need to have measurable learning outcomes, and you need to align to a whole of program philosophy and program learning outcomes, as all of that is required. So for us, we do a range of structural and process things. For instance, if a student's required to come to an exam, but she's got a woman in labour, then she just rings up or emails and says, I've got a woman in labour, and she goes to the woman in labour, because you can't profess woman-centred care. You can't profess that the woman comes first and then, in fact, ask the student to put the exam first and the woman second. So we would always make arrangements for that. She'd attend the woman for labour and birth. She'd go home and have plenty of rest, and 2 or 3 days later she'd do exam. It's just once you get those principles right and the philosophy right, then you design around that. And this slide just shows you the values, the meta values that underpin our curriculum, and you can see woman-centred is front and centre. Birth is normal, that it's a social model of care. Continuity of care is important. critical, that it needs to be culturally safe and respectful care, that midwifery is political and need to be critically reflexive. So we use this in the design and delivery, and we come back to this when we're unsure about what the next steps might be or should be. So I'm going to move on now. So I've talked about curriculum. I'm now going to talk about mid-step, which is about evaluating students' clinical experience. And for any educators that are on board today, I'd really like you to think about this. If you're in a position to influence standards nationally, I'd really like you to think about having a look at this tool in particular for midwifery. There's a big move in Australia to have, if you like, a standardized clinical evaluation tool for all of the health disciplines. And I can see, obviously, that's got some merits, but we developed a mid-step and we've been using it now at Griffith for a number of years. We use it year on year. There are now a range of other universities throughout Australia and some in New Zealand that are also evaluating the students' clinical experience as a clinical component of their education program using mid-step. It has 16 items for a clinical learning environment scale and 10 items for a midwife preceptor scale. And both of those have two subscales, the skill development subscale, like for instance, it would ask about, how well did your preceptor facilitate your skill development in something or other. But it also, and I think this is the defining characteristic of mid-step, it has questions that relate specifically to support in the learning environment and with the preceptor around the development of a philosophy of midwifery practice. So that would say, did the clinical learning environment foster your ability to provide woman-centered care? Did the clinical learning environment foster your ability to critically think or to raise clinical questions? So it has a range of questions around skill development and the philosophy of midwifery practice, because what we've really got to say to ourselves is, are we placing students and enabling their experiences, their clinical experiences, that really build up them as a midwife, not just as any old, and I don't mean this negatively either, they're not a generic health worker. Midwives bring a certain sort of skills, but they also bring with that a philosophy of midwifery that I think is critical to what Anna was talking about before. That is our connection to purpose. Midwives come in and stay being midwives because they love practicing midwifery. They're not trying to be a generic healthcare worker. Even a generic healthcare worker that might, for instance, like a GP, have some times where they work with pregnant women or postpartum women or birthing women. And then we use mid-step we embed it within a broader clinical evaluation survey because we want other information as well. We want to know what year the student's in. We want to know predominantly which model she's been in, if she's been in a continuity care model or a fragmented shift-based model for the last 6 months. We've got a range of other questions that we want to ask the student. So it's within it, which practice site is she at, for instance? Has she worked predominantly with the one preceptor for that entire time? Those sorts of questions, they help give us the other variables for us to use in analysing the data. We use this data to inform decision-making about potential improvements to the clinical program. We write an annual report based on these data. It's quite a comprehensive report. There's a long report. And we give the report to each of our practice sites. Some of our practice sites are private midwifery practices, but most of them are hospitals. Toowoomba Hospital, Gold Coast Hospital, they all get the report. They all get the report that also compares the cohort of students that were at their service with the cohorts of students that were at other services, so they can see how they're going as a health service in providing a quality clinical learning environment for the student midwives, and they can benchmark that against neighbouring services fundamentally. And they really value that as well. And that's really helped them inform their discussions all within health, if you know what I mean. So, you'll have Logan Hospital and Gold Coast Hospital and Toowoomba Hospital all talking together about things that they did well, the things that they want to improve on. And they can look to their sister organisations to say, you clearly really nailed that. We didn't do so well on that. What are you doing? And how do we bring our results up to your level. So there's been terrific learning in it. And even at its most basest, at a very sort of basic, not so charitable level, health services can be quite competitive. They just don't like some other hospital doing a better job of providing a student learning environment than their hospital. So one way or another, whether it's a super positive, caring, collaborative thing, or whether it's a slightly negative, minorly petty, competitive thing, nevertheless, that notion of giving people data about how their institution is performing in providing quality clinical learning experiences to students does make them improve. And we have seen that over time, improvements in the clinical learning environment, especially in areas where there was a shortfall. So we can look across scales. We look at the student, across the scales, the midwifery student rate continuity of care models more highly. So one of the things we measure is what model of care were you in, like working in, and students really value continuity of midwifery care. Okay, now keep me right and interrupt me if you think I'm going too long. I think I'll be right. Okay, outcomes for women and their babies. The other thing we've done is we've created this clinical e-portfolio, and the students record all of their things in there, all of their clinical learning in there. They do holistic reflection. They report on their mandatory experiences. There's a range of skill development tools embedded within it. They have their twice yearly AMSAT, we call it, their overarching clinical assessment tool. But they also record all their clinical continuity of care experiences that they provide. And the portfolio is called Maggie, Midwifery at Griffith in something or other. And it's just a platform that we've customized to our needs. One of the things we've built into that now is that when the student midwife reports the data that the woman who she's providing continuity of care with has had the baby, 6 weeks later, that woman gets automatically sent a survey, which includes two standardized scales in it, one with satisfaction and one with respect. And the women fill that out just with a link. They send it all back. It comes back in to the student's clinical portfolio. And then the student has a reflective opportunity to think about the feedback that she's received about the care that she's provided. And women, it's not 100%, but women overall and the vast majority report very, very positive experiences from having a student midwife provide continuity of midwifery care. The other clever thing I think that we did is they record certain clinical outcomes. So we're careful about the clinical outcomes we wanted the students to record in that. But then we've got thousands and thousands of recorded cases of women with continuity of care by student midwife. And what we did is we analysed that data for women who'd had continuity of care by student, but not in a continuity of care model, because that would stuff up the data. And the clinical outcomes for the women who had a student when the woman was going in through a fragmented, shift-based model of care, were as good or better on the 12 variables that we measured. They were not worse on any, and there was a positive reduction. There was less 3rd and 4th degree tears for women who had a student midwife, and less episiotomy and reduced smoking compared to statewide and national perinatal data. So we're not claiming cause and effect, but it is interesting. And in some of our continuity midwifery care programs, we definitely have had things like reduced smoking. So we'd be interested to follow up what that really looked like. And we concluded that student midwives providing continuity care should be offered as soon as possible in pregnancy because they contribute positively to care and that their contribution should be acknowledged. I'm going to leave all these references here, but they're just references of the studies I've referred to along the journey. And really that's it for me. But I guess what I'm trying to say is primacy, acknowledging and providing primacy of the continuity of care experience provided by students, regardless of the model of care that the woman is in, seems to be critical to teaching the next generation of midwives to be able to provide evidence-based woman-centered care. And I think the only other thing I'd say is that I think there's plenty of room to make this the model, all continuity of midwifery care for student midwives. And some universities in Australia are moving towards that, where they might then, in fact, do some shift-based care, say particularly on a postnatal ward, just so they understand how that all works. But I think there's plenty of room to just turn the whole thing on the head and stop doing business as usual and design it for how we want it to be in the future.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. It's so brilliant to hear straight from the horse's mouth, if you like, the insights from the inspiration behind, you know, the direction of travel in the UK and obviously around the world, and the way that you've brought that together rapidly on the back of all the evidence that was collated from the Lancet series, and, you know, moving that into everyday practice and using education as the space to enable transformation. So we're delighted that we can learn from all that, you know, work that you've done. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's a perfect time to sort of bring Caitlin in now to talk about some of the work happening in the UK, and to share with us insights into the continuity of carer subgroup for students looking at education in the UK. So Caitlin Wilson's a consultant midwife who's currently leading the development and implementation of midwifery continuity of carer model in Worcestershire. And she's in a really, she's one of just over 100 consultant midwives, but working in quite a unique role in that she spends about 50% of her time in the trust clinically supporting the transformation of care, but also 50% of the time in the university. And Caitlin's been leading a subgroup of the continuity of care, a national group, to help bring together educators, students, and those working across Health Education England to look at how we can really make a difference now that all universities across the UK are going to be implementing the new Nursing and Midwifery Council standards. Some have already done that, but some are on their journey. So thanks, Caitlin, for being with us this evening to share insights into the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Jenny. Some brilliant presentations. And as Anna has introduced, I'm Caitlin, and I'm a consultant midwife, and I work in Worcestershire, implementing continuity of care, and continuity of care being something very dear to my heart, having done this when we had our first iterations back with the changing childbirth presentations and iterations. So very, very dear to my heart, and it's a real pleasure to be sitting on this side of the coin, so to speak, in trying to implement continuity of care both in practice and in universities. So the title is very long. I'm currently the chair of the subgroup of the expert reference group for continuity of care with NHS England. Thankfully, they don't require business cards or ID cards, because that would be a challenge for anyone to take on. But I'm here today representing that and representing the group to really give you an update on where we are here in England to try and implement some of the things that Jenny has been talking about and Anna's been talking about. So just to let you know that this is work in progress, but to give you an update on really where we are and why we are where we're at. So why was the education group set up? This was asked for by NHS England committee that was working on continuity of care, the expert reference group, to really start to look at the foundations of midwifery education and how we can start to embed this in our education systems and moving forward as continuity of care starts to become the default model as described in 2023. So we really have an opportunity in our education system to drive forward some of this transformation and embed it and really look at the relational model of care and flipping some of what we've traditionally done on its head and really driving this forward, as we said. So domain 2, as we know, our new standards are out and most universities are in the process of adopting this. But domain 2 really looking at how clinicians and students and future midwives embrace continuity of care. So it's really centralizing around that. And all of the other domains will really shake out of continuity of care. So if we get this domain right, and if we start to embed this within our curriculum, really all of those other domains will by proxy just shake out. Of course, we've got the long-term plan and 5 times more, which is also feeding into some of the reasons why continuity of care is really so important for women birthing people and our families. And a new document just released last Thursday from NHS England, which is looking at continuity of care as our default model moving into 2023, and certainly having some of those building blocks. And that is appreciating, of course, the current climate that we are in as we start to hopefully, she says, move out of the COVID pandemic and into something different on the other side of that. But we've also got to take stock in how we're all feeling, and certainly, as Anna alluded to in her presentation, around the burnout and around, you know, how staff are feeling around this, but also that continuity of care is a little bit of our hope in the sunshine of the future of what midwifery might look like. And of course, we've had our better births, which has been driving this forward, and really creating those building blocks of joining up education and practice together and looking at the current context of which we're in. And that's really how we got to be where we're at. So what we're doing, so we really want to build a toolkit or a resource package to really enable COC experiences for student midwives and their mentors and their supervisors, using the new language, my apologies, supervisors and practice assessors out there, and really giving some practical tools. And we really wanted this to be where student experiences are embedded in philosophy of continuity of care, because continuity of care is a philosophy of care. It's not just a model of care, it's a philosophy of care. It's a philosophy of working with women, birthing people and families, and understanding the relational based model is actually one of those interventions that we have that can improve health and outcomes. And I think, Jenny, your work is certainly demonstrating that as students, the power that students have to even make a difference within that. And often students say, I'm just a student, but I think your work really says that's not true. You are a powerful intervention along this journey as well. And so it's really getting that relational model based into the midwifery curriculum. And we wanted best practice examples for sharing and learning. And this was really that we wanted it to be a collaborative of a platform where people could access, where students could access, assessors could access, institutions could access, anyone can access, birthing people and families could access a platform where there were examples of student learning across our entire curriculum and across England for sharing and discussing and disseminating and really using to help everybody learn together about where we're headed with midwifery education. And we wanted all students, supervisors, and of course our service user voices to be absolutely central to this. So all of our stakeholders involved are starting to drive this forward and bringing lots of discussions to the table. We had a meeting just this afternoon, and having those debates and those discussions about how to drive this forward has been just nothing left of just amazing of what the work is going on. And this is a collaboration across England. So there are people spread out throughout, and Teams has been an absolute lifesaver for all of this, because we are able to get together across England to really start to drive this forward. And we wanted it to be a dynamic interface. We really want this to be something that can be updated as new evidence and new information, new best practice tools start to become available. So we really wanted this to be driven by those who are going to be using it and who are going to be accessing it. So really, where are we headed next? So we want the ability for everybody to be able to share their challenges as well as their successes. And it is about being honest about our current context of where we are and where we're at and how people are feeling. And those will create some challenges in our practice placement areas with our supervisors and our assessors, and within our universities. And I think it's embracing those challenges and working through them and finding out how other organizations have perhaps faced these challenges, maybe something slightly differently, and how those have been worked through, but certainly embracing the current context, the current political context as well of our midwifery practice. And we're also discussing getting together to look at local experiences and collaborating together on this to share best practice learning and what those experiences are like, to create a really strong voice about what it means to be a student in continuity of care, whether or not you have actually experienced a continuity of care team, or whether you've had a case loading experience, or whether that is the philosophy that has been built through your curriculum. It's about joining those evaluations together. And also the group, of course, is then looking at how newly qualified midwives, as we move forward in continuity of care, and perhaps replicating something along the lines of this toolkit for our newly qualified midwives who are moving out into continuity of care, and a little bit about that transition from student into qualified workforce and what that might look like in the future. And we'd like this to be hosted, and it will be hosted within the NHSE toolkit site, which I think most people have access to on a regular basis. It's a free access site, and we're hoping to put it there with all the other tools and staffing tools. So it's really, really, really easy access for everybody to get to, and it can be a dynamic tool, which is the key thing. And of course, I've put there that we need you, and we'd love to hear from anybody who has been experiencing continuity out there, or any of our educators out there who are embedding continuity of care. I know there's all sorts of great stories out there, and we want them to be shared, of course, going through your university and all of their processes for sharing things. But if you want to, please do get in touch with us, and you can get to us via Anna's team here at the Midwifery Hour. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to the Continuity of Care Education subgroup. We are growing by the minute, and more voices are being added to it, which I can't think is brilliant. It's just absolutely fantastic. And for their contributions and enthusiasm, and of course to all of the future midwives, because we're doing this for you. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Caitlin, for ensuring that the group stays together and comes together, meets together, and being so inclusive and welcoming. And I think actually Jenny's going to be the newest member to join the group and to bring all that learning and expertise, which is going to be amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much to you both for sharing those insights. And we've got now an opportunity to talk together and have a look at some of the questions that have been coming through as we've been discussing and sharing. So I've got a question that popped through from Deepa Santosh, who's a second-year student midwife, who's currently able to see the pressures and how stretched maternity services are, and as a student is doing lots of tasks. However, is finding there's not always that much time to sit down and discuss and complete paperwork and documentation for the proficiencies, which can be a real struggle, and obviously is feeling bad for midwives who are completely exhausted, and to have the mental space for students, even though they want to be there for students. So have we got any thoughts about what Deepa could do to overcome some of those pressures and challenges to ensure that learning conversation can take place? Have we got any thoughts that we can share?
A couple. First, they've got to have an e-portfolio that can be filled in real time, even when they might not have great internet access. I mean, who knew that the University Hospital for Coventry and Warwickshire, in fact, has terrible mobile coverage? Terrible. Obviously, it has Wi-Fi, but there are many places in Australia where there's poor Wi-Fi and there's poor mobile phone reception. I'm thinking of regional and rural and even remote areas. If they could fill it in real time, whenever they connect to the internet, it uploads and syncs and it's cloud-based. Those forms have to be easy to fill in, smart forms, populate once, not 6 times, no repetition of data. So easy tools. And if they're designed well, then they're easy collaborative tools. So I've given the example of surveys going out automatically to women, but we also have the consent form for COC is electronic as well. The woman just signs it on the device, which is a phone. So there's a phone app that goes with the site. So I think it's fair and reasonable to expect that your university and program provide you with an e-portfolio that is fit for purpose, that makes your life as simple and as straightforward as possible and enhances your learning. So it's a learning tool, but it should be easy to use. And then it should be easy for use for all of the stakeholders that need to use it, including your clinical preceptor or whoever signs you off for your things or whoever's supervising you. It should be easy for them too.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. I think having verbal conversations that can be written by the student for the mentor, but looked at by the supervisor and assessor. So little tips on, maybe asking if you can sort of do the sort of typing for your assessor and supervisor, because we get much quicker and better at navigating as a student those platforms, because we're doing them all the time. So ways that you can sort of help your assessor and supervisor out, and remembering to, I would say as well, link in with your academic assessor. That's a sort of newly identified role or strengthened role really in the new standards. So if you're really struggling, I would say reach out to your academic assessor, who could have conversations about your practice and offer meaningful support to you for your learning. I'm just going to quickly check if there was any other questions that, Donna Clement has asked. Oh, hi Donna, I know Donna. She's been really supportive up in Lancashire and South Cumbria and across Yorkshire. If she's just asking if the toolkit is hosted on NHS England, will academic staff in higher education institutions have access to? So I suppose that's for you, Caitlin.
And yeah, it's a great question. And yes, and that is the vision. It's a vision that it's going to be hosted on the website where the rest of the toolkits are for NHS England. So NHS trusts can go onto it and look at staffing models. There's videos hosted on there, and we're hoping to have a separate domain on there that can be free access, and it will be widely distributed when it's ready and operational, which we're working very rapidly towards.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. And there's a question from Sylvia Ficadenti, who's asked about getting the student digital planner. So you can just go on to allformaternity.com and you'll see there is a kind of slider that pops up, and just have a look for the one that says, here's the offer for the digital planner. You can click directly through that, Sylvia. But I think we've had a really engaging and dynamic hour together, sharing lots of insights. And I think the team at the Maternity and Midwifery Hour will put together the resources that we've shared. So the papers that Jenny shared that are really important and meaningful for both educators, clinicians, assessors and supervisors, and also for future midwives to use in their assignments. I'd be quite keen actually, Jenny, to use the mid-step evaluation tool we're just designing an evaluation for the next year, so that would be a brilliant way of piloting it in England. So I'd love to chat to you more about how we could maybe use that. It looks like a fantastic tool, and one that I think a lot of educators across England and beyond will be really keen to have a look at doing that, because I think it's important, isn't it, to, as well as implementing new approaches to education or practice, it's really important to evaluate them effectively as well. But I think we're coming up to time now. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you both again for spending some of your evening talking to us and sharing your knowledge and expertise. And obviously you're both around on social media. So, you can connect in with both Jenny and Caitlin through Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms if you want to ask any more questions. And obviously we're happy to jump on the Facebook Live and look out for any further questions for anybody that's been watching us tonight. But yeah, just like to say a massive thank you. And I think that's all the questions that we've answered. Any final comments from you, Jenny?
Great pleasure to be here with you today. I'm more than happy to share all things mid-step, including the report, but you have to keep that in confidence.
That, no problem. And thank you to you, Caitlin. Is there any final comments from you?
No, an absolute pleasure. And Jenny, I will be emailing for in confidence reports.
Yeah.
Lovely to speak to you both.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you so much as well to the Midwifery and Maternity Forum for offering this space to share and update each other and others. So thank you very much.
One of the benefits, I think, of a platform like this is that if you are busy clinically, or if you can't watch or listen or engage real time, you can do this at other times. So that is fabulous for such a time as this. So delighted to be with you all, albeit virtually on the screen. My name is Jacqueline Dunkley-Bent. I'm the Chief Midwifery Officer for the NHS in England.
So this is what's called a hybrid event. There are people in the room, there are people watching in groups around the country, and there are people still watching in their pajamas at home. Good morning, Sue, how are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, Neil. Thank you very much. It's fantastic to be here.
My argument is that the solution is health optimization. Prevention is far better than cure.
And I think there is a real risk that services that are lost or reduced during the time of COVID are not restored.
And I hope that you can take valuable insights from today. And if you're listening tonight, or if you're listening next week or next month, take valuable insights from the speakers from today and share the word, share the positive messages with your colleagues, because in these dark times, in these challenging times, everybody needs a green shoot and a pearl of wisdom. Thank you very much. And we are in this together. We stand united together.